Well, I would say, to be honest, it comes from something else, which is far more powerful than any kind of testing, which is to really know and understand your customer and to listen to them.
Ooh.
Okay.
Well
So
put.
I will take, an entrepreneur who knows their market and their customer over A/B testing any day of the week.
Hello and welcome to Your Business, Your Wealth. I am Paul Adams. I am your co-host and founder, CEO of Sound Financial Group. And as always, unless I'm left unsupervised, is Cory Shepard, the man.
I've learned to do that as little as possible.
The man who is vibrating uncontrollably, not being able to go out and be social right now in the midst of COVID-19. The most social man I know, Cory Shepard.
It's true. Although my neighbors, we share a low fence. They have a selfie of themselves holding the drinks that I had passed them over the fence with me and my family 20 feet away around our fire pit. And it's our social distancing Sunday brunch. Yeah, it's great. So,
well, in the midst of everything going on, business challenges, difficulties we know that many business owners are facing, or the difficulties that you're wondering if you're going to face, we're getting a chance to do a profile conversation with Mike McDerment, the co-founder of Freshbooks. And he's going to share with us a little bit about his journey, the difficult times he's been through, a business that started in 2003. So he's seen some mileage on the road. Mike, I'm so glad you could join us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Well, now, one of our favorite things to do, and you guys have experienced this in the past if you're a regular listener, is when Cory and I do this, only one of us prepares for this conversation.
Speaking of leaving you unsupervised,
yeah.
More often than not, it happens that I get to meet our guest for the first time right now. So Mike, nice to meet you. And I'm excited to hear about why we're having him on and what, no, I know a little bit about these.
Yeah. Cory's
That's
actually what, and now in the midst of COVID-19, Mike is actually like, he's a CEO. He's built a successful company you've seen advertisements for. And yet what's he doing right now? Taking care of mom. Tell us a little bit about where you are today.
Oh yeah, I am self-isolating with my wife and three children and my mom, so their grandmother. And well, it just so happens, so we have a 6-week-old. We
Whoa.
are selling. Our home is on the market, which is just, let me tell you, an interesting time to have that happen. And by virtue of that, we moved in with my mom and have been sort of self-isolating for the past sort of 3-4 days as we do. So if a little small child comes running in here, don't be surprised.
All the better. All the better as far as we're concerned. Well, good. Well, Mike, I kind of want to kick off, and we'll definitely turn around to current events here in a few minutes. But I want to start off with where you began the business. You were, before internet marketing companies were a really pervasive thing, you had an internet marketing company in 2003, and it was some breakdowns you had in that business that had you start Freshbooks.
That's right. So I got into internet marketing before it was a popular thing. And, for me, I had a business school background, and, I liked the creativity that came with marketing, but I loved the marrying of the creativity with the math, right? The best thing about digital marketing is the measurement, the ability to test and experiment and to learn. And instead of just loving the creative you might have in advertising and the idea, you could actually get the response and the data. And so I went and built up a client services firm. And then one day I saved over an invoice by accident. I was using Word and Excel like so many people do to manage their books. And, that day I just kind of snapped and said, there has to be a better way to do this. And so I programmed a very simple thing for myself to bill my clients, that no grand ambitions about turning it into a software business. But that was then, and this is now. We're about sort of 400 people today, going to sort of 500 by year end. We have customers in over 100 countries around the world. Over 28 million people have used the service since we started. And right now we're just thinking a lot about the many, the business owners that we serve and how we can best support them in these challenging times.
Well, and speaking of challenging times, one of my favorite things in reading up before our conversation today is that a blog post you did back in 2008. and you talked about I think it was the 7 or 8 ways, I have the list in front of me, I should be looking at it, that I nearly killed FreshBooks.
Yeah.
And that was 2008. We probably have more to add to the list now, but and you wrote that in 2008 before the financial crisis. And I would imagine that you've gone through other difficulties since, but maybe just to start with, the things that I know that are out there is, one, you've traveled through things like 2008.
Yes.
And you've also had co-founders that now are no longer on the leadership team on FreshBooks. So maybe let's just start with 2008, what that was like for you at FreshBooks, Canadian-based company, but certainly impacted by the global financial crisis of that time. What you guys did to journey through that, and what were some of the difficult things that you had to do, and the things that maybe were beneficial that you didn't expect out of that?
Yeah. So, it was an interesting time for us because we were a relatively smaller company. We were just on the cusp of actually raising some angel financing. And, the quantum of that financing and the plans and what have you, in the span of a few weeks just changed. And so we had to change what we were doing and literally we were 26 people at the time. And it was like, I don't know if we can be 26 people anymore. And these kinds of very, very difficult, things. And the good news is that we learned a lot about our business, which is we're very sort of downturn resilient. We have many, many people who, pay us a relatively, we have no customer concentration. Like there's not one big customer who's going to go and move on. That can be scary. It's a recurring revenue model. So there's just a stability in sort of cash flows there. And then these times often lead people to start businesses. So, I think, so just, thing number one, and I say this almost if any of our customers are watching, it's like there's a really good, we know we have a pretty good idea. I'm not saying this will be exactly the same as 2008, but we have a pretty good idea that our business is less likely to be impacted in a big way. But it is indeed a scary time, and it's a time to go ahead and just hope for the best, but plan for the worst in a lot of cases. And and I guess I'm getting a little off track from answering your question directly, which was not my intent. So,
well, I have a question about one of them on your list. So item 2 on your list of ways you almost killed FreshBooks was placing your faith in a spreadsheet. And this one's hard. Like, I love spreadsheets. I can humbly say I could probably build 80% of anything I could imagine that I wanted a spreadsheet to do, but I'm dangerous because I can't do it really fast. So I could take 3 weeks to build something that I should just hire someone else to do. So I have a lot of faith in spreadsheets. Tell me about how this one messed you up.
Yeah, I think it's great. Thanks for going back to those. So let's talk about that. Spreadsheets are a tool. They do some things very, very well, right? I really encourage people to go out and model their business. And so this is a forecasting time for businesses if they're at the place where they actually look into the future and forecast. And so spreadsheets can be very, very handy. I think the important thing to remember is, you might spend a weekend, reforecasting your business and planning things out and contemplating scenarios and land on something. I think that's great. And the discipline of contemplating what the inputs are and the trade-offs are is just incredibly valuable. But like a budget, as soon as you ship it and close the door on that thing, it is already outdated. Like the instant you are done, you are outdated. And so, I think that's an important concept. It's kind of the best data you have at the time, and you can flesh out your assumptions, but you just can't bank on the projections you put in a spreadsheet. And, there are times when, you're planning a business, you're getting excited about the future, and you might go ahead and say, well, the sky's just going to keep going up, or we're going to continue to grow at 400% a year. And the fact is, like in that scenario, and so that was kind of the sort of scenarios we would have been looking at back then, gravity and these kinds of things will catch up with you. So the point is, do the exercise, do the modeling. I would say just don't drink too much of your own Kool-Aid. Recognize you did that. Do it as an exercise to understand your business. But recognize it's not concrete. It's Excel, and you can change a variable pretty quickly.
How do you, for you, in getting, as you mentioned, drinking your own Kool-Aid, What do you do in terms of surrounding yourself leadership wise to give them the permission to challenge? Because I think a lot of our owners and entrepreneurs listening, it can be very easy to go into your back cave, get all your projections done, come out so confident about that it can leave your team with critical input they should give you. How do you make sure that your team, big company, phenomenal success, I mean, starting from literally a garage in 2003, right, to where you are today, how do you make sure that your team can ask those things of you or be critical of the Batcave projections?
I think there are a lot of, I'll go ahead and say, I think there are a lot of things inside all this. So let's go ahead and say, I think the challenge often for owners is we've been running our business for some time. We have a lot of, personal and, ness caught up in it. But, in many cases, it's like, hey, almost everybody's relatively new here. So, you can really get to that mindset of, I just kind of know. And I'll go ahead and say, like, dollars to donuts, you probably do. Okay. And so the question then becomes, you got to go ahead and do that planning. But what I'm a fan of whenever you're doing a model and those kinds of things is, hey, everybody, this is the plan. This is what it is. But let me expose to you the assumptions in the plan. Okay. And which is a great way to educate people and get a discussion going. So let's not argue about the input. I'm telling you, this is what's going to happen. I'm probably right. Okay. Which, by the way,
I survived this long.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it's hard to take away that kind of moral authority. And I'm not even sure that's the best idea. But then the trick is to do that and marry it with, but listen, I'm open-minded. Let me expose to you the underlying assumptions I have that led me to this output, and let's discuss those. And I think that's where people sometimes get stuck. They don't argue about the outputs, argue about the assumptions. And then that creates a space where people can be like, oh, you think, I don't know, close rates are going to go up in this environment because X, and, I don't necessarily agree with that, right? And then, so you have a discussion about that, and there's something else somebody may think goes the other way. And, in the net, it probably winds up where you were as an owner, but now you've gone ahead and engaged your team with what the assumptions are. Maybe they uncovered something you hadn't thought of that you do want to reconsider, which would be, which is really the thing you're striving for at the end of the day. But it all starts with going ahead and exposing the assumptions and having a discussion around those.
I think that is so great. And for most owners, we're our baby in its growth and what it's going to look like in 5 years is super personal to us. Those assumptions aren't as much so. So we can take that, open that up to our team without that extra friction that can come. I think that's brilliant. Now, speaking of team, as you've grown your business, many founders originally have partners or co-founders that don't always stay an active part of the business. Having grown up in the church world is a great example of it, is that the members of a congregation that make up the first 10 families in a growing church aren't necessarily the same families that you keep when that church body grows to 1,000. The same thing can ring true in business, although it feels much more personal to many people. But I did notice that your co-founders are not currently listed on the leadership team of the website. And I'm wondering if you'd be open enough with the audience, just share a little bit about what that journey was like for you and for your best estimation for them.
That's right. So I have two co-founders. One of them, Joe, he helped write the initial application. He's a tenured professor in computer science, and he never worked more than 2 days a week with us. And then my other co-founder is Levi. And Levi still operates with us every day, and he joins our senior leadership team meetings. But, what happens when you scale, and this is one of the hardest things about it, is you go ahead and outgrow people. And what it was said to me once, and I sort of subscribe to, is the only role that won't be run by a professional at scale, or may not be, is that of CEO. It is basically very rare that people who are with you at the start can continue with you as you grow. Now, again, we are, a pretty, I guess we're approaching medium-sized business territory, almost 500 employees. That's not going to be everyone's business, and you can probably work with people and help coach them up, and their experience is helpful. But as you start to go through various organization points, whether it's 40 or 80 or 100 people, you're going to start outgrowing folks. And so in our case with Joe, how do we work it out? I think that the thing with founders is you're always a founder. No one can take that away from somebody. And I don't think that's a good idea to even try. And over the years, we've had various decision points we've needed to make. Like, do we want to take on capital? How fast do we want to go? Should we build this thing? What kind of, neighborhood do we want to locate the office in? And these are like, they're really, they have long-term, these decisions cast long shadows. And the good news is, in our case, is it just really comes down to the people. And I think that's a truism for everybody. The people in that founding group, like if they're good people with shared values, right? And they all have the same information. This is a belief that I have. If if shared values, same information, chances are you're going to arrive at the same decision. And if not, you can sort of work through it effectively. So we didn't have a scenario where, we felt we needed to exit somebody sort of from the founding scenario. We just had people who were always trying to do the right thing for the collective. And I think that's the thing to solve for, and stay away from like the money. For all of us, it was like about building something and kind of doing the right thing. And when the focus is there, and it's not like how much of this thing do I own, which I think is just the wrong way to look at things.
Right on. Well, in just a minute, we're going to take a break. But when we come back, we're going to be talking with Mike McDerment a little more about Freshbooks and how its offer has evolved and what he and his company are doing to deal with the current COVID-19 crisis. Paul Adams here at Sound Financial Group. Are you curious what you can accomplish with our help? You're here enjoying the show. Our philosophy is helping you increase your effectiveness with money, and now we have a way to help you take another step on your financial journey. We have designed a financial inquiry call for you and the thousands of other listeners of Your Business, Your Wealth. This is a complimentary 15-minute conversation where one of our team members will ask you some key questions, understand your concerns, and if appropriate, schedule a time for further conversation with an advisor. If you look at the episode description, you'll see a link to schedule a call at a time that's least invasive for you. And even if now's not the right time for us to work together, we'll point you toward resources to help you in your financial journey. We always look forward to connecting with our listeners, and we look forward to talking with you soon.
And welcome back to Your Business, Your Wealth with Mike McDerment, CEO and co-founder of Freshbooks. Mike, going back to your list of ways you almost killed the company, one other that I've just been drooling to ask you about is placing my faith in consultants. So we're really big about learning over here at Sound Financial Group. And if someone has something really cool they could teach us, we're really open to hiring them. Let's just put it that way. So tell me about what made that show up on your list.
Yeah. My experience is this balance, right? What you really want around you is, people who have opinions and advice and counsel. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, you really have to seek your own counsel. And what I found, we were a technology company. We're effectively a really easy to use small business accounting software in the cloud. And when we were getting started out running things in the cloud, that wasn't even a thing yet, right? It was desktop software. And so we were really, really out there. And I didn't have like a technology background. I'd never worked for anyone else. And the point is, the list of things that I knew I did not know was much, much longer than the list of things that I thought I might know. And by virtue of that, it just gets very hard to make decisions. And then you go bump into somebody, and I classically, even though I kind of have the business school background, I'm sort of biased against sometimes MBAs and stuff like this. Like people who can just, talk smart, and everything just seems so clear cut. No, here's a framework for this. And I was like, oh, framework, like, what is that? Oh, so genius. And, and I was kind of drawn into all that. And what you'll find is that people, again, people are going to have opinions. And I found just the certainty of that would draw me in. But it was very dangerous to actually go with any of those, because we basically systematically proved, almost all of those to be wrong over time. And so we decided to, like, I was drawn, but no, we won't bother going down that path. And drawn, no, it doesn't feel right. And so we ended up making a bunch of good decisions. But it was almost always by going the other way from the smartest people in the room. And so I think that's hard. And so those consultants, and maybe sometimes, their board members or whatever it is, people who can talk authoritatively, when you're getting started, you just need to take that as input, and you need to consider it. I think the worst thing you can do is just dismiss it, right? I think you got to take it on and honestly weigh it. But at the end of the day, you need to make your own call, and you need to know that, like, at the end of the day, you probably know better, but you got to listen. So that's the tension. It's like, you got to listen, you got to internalize it, but then you really got to trust yourself to make a good decision at the end, even if, it's not popular.
Really good. Well, and speaking of, FreshBooks and its journey, like, I was going on your website and looking at everything FreshBooks actually does, not to mention all the APIs it can connect to with other programs. Can you just talk a little bit about, it started this way and it's evolved, and kind of what has caused you to make one decision versus another, and the way you've evolved that?
So the business started out when I saved over that invoice. And so we literally started out as, an online invoicing tool. It was kind of invoice presentment. And then, we put it out there and people signed up. And so most of the business was guided by feedback. And so, then we were like, oh, we need, the ability to send a quote or an estimate and then turn that into an invoice. Okay, we'll go ahead and build that. Eventually we got into expenses. And the reason we did that was not to help people manage both sides of the ledger, but because a lot of our clients needed to rebill expenses and get them on an invoice. And so you can start to see this, this pattern of, okay, we put something out there, we got feedback, we iterated. Now, in hindsight, it seems like, obvious that you do all these things, but
that comes right out of your A/B testing from your early online marketing.
Well, I would say, to be honest, it comes from something else, which is far more powerful than any kind of testing, which is to really know and understand your customer and to listen to them. Ooh. Okay. Well, so I will take, an entrepreneur who knows their market and their customer over A/B testing any day of the week. And I think it's I think the trick with A/B testing is to know where and why and when you're doing the testing. And I think sometimes people, take it and use it to make big decisions that they really, really should not. They need to know their customer and their market. And so we just got to know our customer. We were constantly talking to our customers. We were getting emails. We always answered the phone. If you call FreshBooks today, call them right now, you're going to get a real live person who's going to probably answer the series of questions you may or may not have on that call. Not going to be passed on, all those and you can call back and you'll get another person and they'll follow on from that.
A cloud-based software company where they answer the phone.
Yeah, and I'll wager it's going to be less than 2 rings.
Okay? It's Mike's mom answering the phone.
Well, I mean, it's funny. Those calls aren't ringing into this residence today. Okay. But our team of 400 plus people, about I don't know, 80 of those or whatever in support are working remotely today, answering calls in their homes by thanks to the power of technology, if you will. So anyhow, but I call it proximity to customer. We really knew our customer. We really we wanted every communication channel to be open, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. However you want to communicate with us, we want to be there to hear from you, which is a different orientation than people. But it meant that we knew that in a lot of businesses are like, we don't want to talk to our customers. We want their money, but we don't want to talk with them. And we kind of take a different approach, which is the closer you are to the customer, you better understand them. And everyone spends the first month in customer service at FreshBooks for every single role, which is, just kind of how we keep them alive.
That was said fast.
Wow.
Every single employee spends 1 month in customer service, regardless of what role they're taking on in the company.
500%.
Wow.
That says something and speaks to probably a culture that now exists that couldn't have been created otherwise, because everybody knows what it's like to interface with a customer, even if they just got recruited from some other technology company where they never interfaced a customer.
That's correct.
Wow. As our listeners are tuning in, what do you think, from your perspective, if they're in certain industries or certain size, are the people that should be going to the FreshBooks website right now and really considering using FreshBooks for their business?
Well, first of all, thank you for asking. But let me go ahead and tell you. So what we are is, we are an accounting software platform that is not built for every kind of business. So we don't serve retail, and we really don't serve restaurants unless you have like a catering arm and we do your billing for that. So what we focus on are basically businesses that send invoices to clients. And so if you invoice and you need some accounting to go with that, we're really strong in the billing and billing workflows that you'll have, payment collections. And by virtue of not trying to serve every kind of business, we kept the whole offering very, very easy to use. And so if you have no employees and you work for yourself, we're going to be great for you. I would say, we can consider our sweet spot up to 20 to 50 at the higher end, which is, in service-based market segments. So not retail, not restaurant, but service-based market segments. So those are the folks I'd encourage to go ahead and check us out.
Right on. Well, we certainly have those clients and those listeners that are kind of that, specialized knowledge. They're transacting in the marketplace. They're making between $200,000 and $2 million a year with little to no staff. And it seems like it's a perfect fit for that, even as an outsider, just briefly looking at the website. So your communication is so on point. As we wrap, would you share a little bit? I mean, this episode's going to come out about a week, I think, after our recording here today. What is it that you guys are doing, and what are you seeing from your perspective? Because you're not only head of a 400-person company, but you're also connected to a lot of other technology companies, founders, et cetera. What do you see going on as it relates to COVID-19, of course, in Canada and the United States? And what do you see as either what you guys will do to adapt to it, and or what opportunities do you see that people may not be thinking about because they're just got the pandemic right in their face?
So let me go ahead and say the first thing I see is the imperative to behave like a good civic participant.
Yeah.
Okay. I think, I believe in the good of business. I think some people want to think business is evil and profit, all these kinds of things. And I think businesses are made up of people, and people generally want to do good things and be good people. And so I think this is a wonderful time for business to lead. Right. And to think about, when I think about the 400 people we have, coming into work every day and normally, that to me is, if we can have everybody work from home, which we've gone ahead and done, what is the role we can play in thwarting the spread of the virus so that people, like our demographics, are relatively less likely to get seriously ill. But, 400 people moving about and potentially spreading the virus to people who are more vulnerable is a very serious thing. And so, the first thing is, hey, what role can we play? What is just the right thing to do? And how do we operate out of, sort of a good sort of moral grounding in our role as a citizen in the communities in which we operate to be? So we sent everybody to go ahead and work from home. And we did that. We started last Thursday. I also then at the same time went ahead and sort of checked myself and my family into, and it's a Tuesday today, so about 5 days ago. We're self-isolating, wife and 3 kids. We're really not going out. And again, we're just trying to really not play a role in spreading this to others who may be more gravely impacted, and not play a role in, accelerating the spread such that the healthcare system might be overwhelmed. Okay. And so that's my starting point. Prior to that, we'd even gone and stopped kind of basically getting on planes as a business and business travel. I thought that was a responsible thing to do. And now we're seeing, obviously, late last week, people going and closing down, travel. And we're not even all the way there yet. The Canada-US border is still wide open. And to me, it's like we probably want to put some constraints on even that, as friendly as we are, and state to state, even in country. Just planes are kind of bad right now, right? Anyways, these are the measures we want to take to basically just try and thwart it and be a good citizen. As for opportunities, I think there are some businesses who are going to be swiftly and immediately affected. I think bars and restaurants, these kinds of things, very much retail, very much fall into these categories. And so, I think there's, again, the civic responsibility. Things we're working on right now are like, can we invest in gift cards, and go ahead and buy some of those for future purposes for local businesses? So I'd encourage you all to like, hey, how would you buy, your next 10 lunches at your local restaurant? Buy it now and kind of get them the cash to help them get through this as a sign of sort of goodwill and solidarity, which is a small thing, we can all do. And then, inside each business, I think there are opportunities too. So for us, we operate in a bunch of countries, and this is maybe a little more not relevant for every business, but a lot of our operations are on the Canadian dollar, but we collect a lot of our revenue on the U.S. dollar, and so we're seeing some currency favorability now. And my point is, there are going to be things inside of here that we can go ahead and do. And what I would encourage people to do is try to operate from a place of A, what is the right thing to do, and B, can we see some opportunities versus fear and reaction. Okay, and so with that, I'll just offer up one last thing. I think as people sort of self-isolate and get very concerned with themselves and their own health, I think, again, back to being a good civic actor, if you will, I think one of the things during these times that really helps bring meaning and purpose and encourage doing the right things is to shift from a mindset of me to a mindset of we. All of this is much, much bigger than FreshBooks. What I want to do is make sure we play a role in hopes of inspiring others to do the right thing. But when I start thinking about all the people that we can help and be there for at this time in a variety of ways, that makes me want to go ahead and do that. And it also takes me out of the mindset of like being afraid that something bad's going to happen to me and my family to like, hey, I think we can safely support a whole bunch of people. And that is a beautiful thing, because I think a lot of people need, a lot of support in these uncertain times.
That's really, really well put. Well, Mike, I'm so glad you could make it today. Just even us being on video, chatting today, having you on the podcast in the midst of all of this was on your calendar. Your team had committed to it months ago, and here we are. So appreciate you doing that. And I think that probably shows up across FreshBooks, like a lot of the other values you've shared with us. The big takeaways we have today is that idea of similar values, same information. Partners, co-founders will work it out. The idea that decisions we make today, the big ones, especially as founders and CEOs, have long shadows. And the ability to allow others not so much to question where we're going, but to have those key team members look into the underlying assumptions and have conversations or debate about that rather than about the outcomes and all the friction that can come from it. I think there's a lot of great things here for our audience. I can't wait to get the feedback about this episode. And Mike, I'm just super thankful that in the midst of all of this, you could make it here to spend time with us today.
No, thank you very much for having me. And I hope you and all your listeners, be healthy, folks, and we'll get through this.
Very good. And to all of you, from Cory and I and everybody at Sound Financial Group, we hope that this has been a contribution to you being able to design and build a good life. Hope you enjoyed watching that video, tuning in. We love having you guys here. Don't forget to like that video, subscribe, and hit the alert bell. But by the way, if you just have questions and you want to dig in and learn a little more, go ahead and email us at info@sfgwa.com. Put yourself in the position to have a 15-minute phone call. I mean, come on. Can your current plans withstand a second opinion? If not, that might be the very reason to reach out.